I moved into my new apartment 3 months ago, a compact but modern one-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood. The rent was cheap, almost suspiciously so, but I didn't question it. At the time, I just needed a place to stay. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. Work kept me busy, and I spent most nights watching TV or scrolling through my phone. But then, strange things started happening. At first, it was small. My keys weren't where I left them. The bathroom light was on when I was sure I had turned it off. I blamed my own absent-mindedness. Then one night I woke up to a sound. A soft scratching noise coming from inside the walls. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Mice? Rats? The thought made my skin crawl, but I tried to convince myself it was nothing serious. Until the noises became more frequent. Sometimes I'd hear whispers. Faint, almost imperceptible murmurs when the apartment was silent. I pressed my ear against the wall once, but as soon as I did, the sounds stopped. Then came the smell, a faint, musty odor like something rotting. It seemed to come and go, but it was strongest near the bedroom closet. One night, as I was lying in bed, half asleep, I heard a noise so distinct that it made my blood run cold. A click, like a door unlocking. I bolted upright. My eyes darted toward the closet. The door was slightly ajar. Had it been opened before? I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My pulse thundered in my ears as I approached the closet, gripping the door handle with sweaty fingers. I pulled it open. Nothing. Just clothes and a few boxes. I let out a shaky breath, laughing at myself. I was losing it. Maybe I needed to see a therapist or take some time off work. Then, as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. The back wall of the closet looked wrong. I leaned in closer, running my fingers along the surface. The paint was a slightly different shade than the rest of the closet. I knocked lightly. Hollow. My stomach clenched. There was space behind this wall. Why would there be an empty space inside my apartment? I hesitated, then grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen and wedged it into the crack between the wall and the molding. With a little effort, the panel popped loose. A dark opening yawned before me. A crawlspace. My phone flashlight illuminated the narrow passage, revealing a cramped area that extended into the darkness. The smell was stronger now, damp, decayed. And then I saw something that made me nearly drop my phone. A mattress. Thin, filthy, covered in stains. Crumpled food wrappers and empty water bottles were scattered around it. Someone had been living here. Goosebumps prickled my skin. My entire body screamed at me to back away, but my curiosity pushed me forward. I crouched down, aiming my flashlight deeper into the crawlspace. There were clothes, a few notebooks, even a toothbrush. Then I saw something worse. A hole. A perfectly round hole carved into the drywall, on the other side of which was my bedroom. I stared in horror. This was why I felt watched. Someone had been watching me sleep. Suddenly I heard it. Breathing. Not my own. It came from deeper inside the crawlspace. I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my grip. A shape moved in the shadows, slowly, almost cautiously. Then it lunged. A man, disheveled, gaunt, his face contorted in a grotesque grin, scrambled toward me on all fours, his fingers clawing at the floor as he let out a guttural, inhuman growl. I screamed, stumbling backward, falling onto my back. My phone flew from my hand, the flashlight spinning wildly. He was right there. I kicked wildly, managing to scramble out of the crawlspace, yanking the panel back into place. My heart hammered as I threw myself out of the closet, grabbing my phone and running out of the apartment. I didn't stop running until I reached the street. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the apartment and found the crawlspace exactly as I had seen it. The mattress, the food wrappers, the hole in the wall, it was all there. But the man? Gone. They told me he must have escaped through the building's ventilation system. There were no security cameras in the apartment hallways, no way to track him. They assured me they'd increase patrols in the area, but I knew better. He wasn't just some random squatter. He had been watching me, studying me, waiting. I moved out the next day, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The landlord refunded my deposit without question, almost as if he knew something I didn't. I didn't care. I just wanted to be gone. For weeks, I stayed with a friend, jumping at every sound, every shadow. I started therapy, trying to convince myself it was over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then, one night, I got a notification on my phone. It was from the security app I'd used in the apartment. I had forgotten to uninstall it. My stomach dropped as I opened the app. The camera feed was live. The apartment was dark, but I could see movement. Someone was there. I told myself it was the new tenant, but the figure moved with that same unnatural slowness I remembered. My hands trembled as I zoomed in. It was him. He was standing in the middle of the living room, staring directly into the camera. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, but his lips were curled into that same grotesque smile. And then he did something that made my blood run cold. He held up a piece of paper. On it, scrawled in messy handwriting, were the words, "I missed you." I dropped my phone, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a sick joke, but I knew better. He was still there, waiting. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone again. The apartment was empty, the crawlspace sealed shut. They found nothing. But as they were leaving, one of the officers handed me something they'd found on the floor. It was a key. My key. The one I thought I'd lost weeks ago. I stared at it, my mind racing. How long had he had it? How many times had he been in my apartment without me knowing? I moved across the city after that, to a high-rise with security cameras and doormen. I told myself I was safe. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it, the faint sound of scratching, like nails against a wall. And when I close my eyes, I see his face. Because I know he's still out there. And he's not done with me. I never considered myself paranoid. A creaking floorboard here, a flickering light there. Old houses have their quirks. But after moving into my grandmother's house, something felt wrong. Not just the kind of wrong you can brush off, but the kind that settles deep in your bones and whispers that you're not alone. The house was a sprawling Victorian relic at the end of a desolate street, surrounded by gnarled trees that clawed at the sky. My grandmother had passed away a month ago, leaving me the house in her will. I planned to sell it after sorting through her belongings, but for now, it was my temporary home. The first night, I barely slept. Not because of grief, but because of the noises. It started with the attic. A faint shuffling, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to seep through the walls. I told myself it was the wind, the house settling, anything but what my gut was screaming at me. The food disappearing was harder to ignore. At first, it was small things. An apple missing from the fruit bowl, a slice of bread gone from the loaf. I chalked it up to forgetfulness. But one morning, I opened the fridge to find an entire container of leftovers missing. That's when I noticed the footprints. Faint, dusty imprints led from the kitchen to the hallway. They weren't mine. My shoes were by the door, and I had cleaned the floors the night before. My chest tightened as I followed the trail, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The footprints stopped at the foot of the attic ladder. The attic, the noises, the whispers. Someone, or something, had been inside. I checked all the locks. They were secure. The windows? Shut tight. But the house was old, its secrets buried deep within its walls. Maybe there was another way in. That night, I set up my phone in the kitchen, using an app to detect motion. If someone came in, I'd catch them. I tried to sleep, but every creak and groan of the house kept me on edge. At 2:47 a.m., the alert woke me. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone and played the footage. The kitchen was dark, empty. Then movement. The pantry door creaked open slowly, and a pale, thin hand reached out. A shadowy figure emerged, crouched low, moving with unnatural slowness. My breath caught in my throat. The person, or thing, turned its head toward the camera. A face, gaunt and hollow-eyed, stared into the lens. Its lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. Then it smiled, a grotesque stretching of skin over bone, and vanished into the shadows. I dropped the phone. The attic. The sounds at night. The missing food. Someone had been living in my house. With shaking hands, I grabbed a flashlight and a knife from the kitchen drawer. I had to check the attic. If I left now, I'd never come back. I needed to see. The pull-down ladder groaned under my weight as I climbed up, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The attic was cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and dust-covered memories. And then I saw it. A makeshift sleeping area, thin blankets, crumpled food wrappers, a cracked mirror. A rusted knife lay beside the pile of rags. My stomach turned. But what chilled me more were the walls. Scratched into the wood, over and over, were the words, "You never lived here alone." From the shadows, something lunged at me. A man, or what used to be a man. Skin stretched too tightly over his bones, his eyes sunken and wild. He moved on all fours, his joints cracking with each unnatural step. He screeched, a sound that wasn't human, and scrambled toward me. I stumbled back, crashing down the attic ladder. Pain shot through my back as I hit the floor, but I didn't stop. I ran, throwing open the front door, my screams lost in the night. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the attic but found nothing. No bedding, no food wrappers, no sign of the man I saw. Except for one thing. On the attic wall, scratched deep into the wood, were the words, "You never lived here alone." I moved out the next day, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The house sold quickly, and I tried to put it behind me. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the whispers again. Soft, indistinct murmurs that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. And when I close my eyes, I see his face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, smiling that grotesque smile. Because deep down, I know he's still there. Waiting. Watching. And I was never supposed to leave. I had always dreamed of owning a house. Not just any house. A quiet, peaceful place away from the noise of the city. So when I found an old but charming home on the edge of town for an unbelievably low price, I didn't think twice. I bought it immediately. The house was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a big backyard. The realtors said it had been empty for a while, but I didn't care. I was ready to make it my own. The first few weeks were wonderful. I spent my evenings painting the walls, arranging furniture, and making the house feel like home. Everything was normal. Until I started hearing the noises. It began with a soft tapping sound, like someone gently knocking on wood. At first, I thought it was the wind or the house settling. But the tapping didn't stop. It came every night, always from the same place, under the floor. I tried to ignore it, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I got down on my knees and pressed my ear to the floor. I knocked back. The response was immediate. I froze. My heart raced. There was someone, or something, underneath my house. I told myself it was just an animal. Maybe a raccoon or a possum had gotten into the crawlspace. But deep down, I knew better. The tapping was too rhythmic, too human. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went outside to check. The crawlspace entrance was a small, rusted metal hatch at the side of the house. I hesitated before pulling it open. A foul smell hit me, like something rotten. I shined my flashlight inside. The space was cramped, filled with dust and cobwebs. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just pipes, dirt, and wooden beams. I noticed something. A pile of blankets, a flattened pillow, empty food wrappers, food I had bought but thought I'd misplaced. My stomach turned. Someone had been living under my house. I backed away, my mind racing. I had to call the police. But as I turned, my foot brushed against something. I looked down. A notebook. It was damp, the pages yellowed and crumpled. I opened it, my hands shaking. The writing inside was messy, almost frantic. And then I saw it, my name. Over and over. Pages filled with details about my life. What I ate. What I wore. When I went to bed. A cold wave of fear washed over me. I slammed the hatch shut and ran inside, locking the doors behind me. That night, I slept with a knife under my pillow. But sleep didn't come. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard it. Not tapping this time. Breathing. Heavy, raspy breathing. Right under my bed. I froze, my fingers tightening around the knife. The mattress shifted slightly, as if someone was pressing against it from below. Then a voice. Horse. Too close. I like watching you sleep. I screamed, rolling off the bed and scrambling for the door. The breathing turned into laughter, high-pitched, giddy, unnatural. I didn't stop. I ran out of the house barefoot, sprinting down the road until I reached my neighbor's porch. I pounded on their door until they answered. The police arrived within minutes. They searched my house. And they found him. A man. Skinny, his face hollow and pale. He had been living in a hidden space beneath the floorboards, where he had carved out a hole directly under my bed. The officer told me later that he had been there for weeks, watching me through the gaps in the floor, crawling out when I wasn't home, eating my food, whispering to me while I slept. I sold the house the next day. But sometimes, even now, in the dead of night, I still hear the tapping, and I wonder if he's still there, waiting.